Wow.
You kind of broke up there, but I think the boat was held together by magnets, and we still don't know how they work. So I believe that is the best explanation.
Yeah, I thought it was iron nails or rivets or what have you. But on the mention of cedar, you have to remember, this reminds me of that thing about the behemoth, and its tail moveth like a cedar. And I'm wondering, do trees really move like an elephant's tail? I mean, never mind. Well, that's going to be for another video.
Concordance is our resident expert on hardwood. Concordance, what do you think about the ability there of cedar to hold up that boat?
I'm not rising to that.
Well, what does make you rise? Old age is a terrible thing.
You know.
But no, A. McNeil.
Show us the greeting, guys.
What I would recommend you do is watch a two-part series of videos by It's the Superfly, who goes into a lot of detail about how the Ark could have been constructed, and it's actually, they're very informative. The conclusion basically is that it was an absolute impossibility. One of the reasons being, as you say, the wood that was likely to be used was cedar, and the tallest cedar is obviously less than the 300 cubits in length of the Ark, which means that the hull would have to be put into place or created by a number of pieces of wood, and the chances of actually keeping those together, apart from all the other matters, but the chance of keeping those together is non-existent. It really is a physical impossibility.
Wait a minute, who? If I may ask a question real fast, there's another thing that kind of pops in my head here. Who helped? No, I mean, this seems like more than a one-man job. Like, I mean, building a boat that's this sort of length, raising up full trees. No, but I mean, you need someone else to help. I mean, I can have 100 years to, lift a truck into my apartment, but it ain't gonna happen.
Well, maybe
and it's 3 sons. I mean, there are 4 of them, and it looks to me like a week.
Doesn't it take more than 4 people to lift a 100-ton log?
My God! Come on, Donnie.
Levers and pulleys. Come on.
I mean, did he have helper elves, or like how exactly did this get accomplished? It just seems like more than a 4-man job. That's all I'm saying. Go ahead.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
The Force. I hadn't even thought of that.
Hey, McNeil.
Yeah, I was thinking this was the advent of Santa and his elves helping Noah build the Ark with Jesus and the Easter Bunny.
Well, it makes as much sense as anything else in the Bible does.
Easter bunnies are irreducibly complex, so they could not have taken part in it.
Well, that's all I got.
All right, then. Well, thank you very much for the call. We'll move quickly on, I hope.
Good evening, gentlemen. I trust you can hear me well.
We can
hear you super!
Oh, super. Well, first of all, I do wish I was a believer so that Aaron Ra could convert me to sanity and win one for the team. But I suspect that believers would avoid this show rather like the plague. I had about a page of A4 questions to ask, so I'll have to narrow it down somewhat. First one, possibly a leading question. Could the flood stories come from the breaching of the Bosphorus, creating the Black Sea around about 5,600 BC? Because of the evidence of societies being pushed back, and could that have created catastrophic stories that were in the Stone Age psyche? And that's kind of a leading question. And the other thing I wanted to ask was a question about the actual believers themselves, who I think are the really interesting thing about this debate rather than this stupid story. Do you think that people who believe in this story, do you think you can win them over? Or do you think some of them have a mental illness like narcissistic personality disorder where you just cannot win against them, rather like Nephi?
Well, okay, on the first part of your question, the Black Sea seems to have been a rather abrupt inundation, and it was a permanent one. And so it didn't leave a lot of folklore. It was also much older than the folklore really could have withstood. I believe it was 7,000 BCE, something in that order. We also have a number of other floods where we have, like the Sea of Galilee, extending its normal borders such that it would engulf whole villages, and they had in the last decade or so just discovered, other villages that are actually contained in and submerged within the Sea of Galilee. There have been lots of different floods, but it appears to be the one that's centered on Shuruppak, 2900 BC, that generates all of the key stories, that means Utnapishtim, Atrahasis, Ubartutu, and so on, that seem to be the origin of the Noachian flood myth. Now, your other point about reaching these people and whether they have a mental illness.
Yes.
I don't think it's a mental illness. And I have a very interesting singular example to bring up to you. I knew this guy who, and this is going to sound strange, I dearly loved this guy. He was absolutely my best friend in high school, truly. But in high school, he had this peculiar thing of declaring himself to be Superman. He had all the Superman memorabilia, he had the Superman shirt, he had Superman costumes, he had everything related to Superman in his house. He was absolutely the Superman. He looked like Superman. He had the curl in his hair, everything. He actually looked a little bit more like Captain Kirk, but yeah, he did the Superman thing pretty well. And the amusing thing was that there came a point where we tried to get him to admit that he was not Superman, and we couldn't. He had all kinds of excuses. His arguments were amazing. You could not argue this guy to ever get him to concede the point that he was not Superman. You couldn't make it. We had people gathering to come to sit at our table in the school before the classes began to argue with this guy to get him to admit or to concede any point that he wasn't actually Superman. He would defy any demand to perform any tests of any sort. His arguments were exactly apologetics. It excused him from any kind of evidence whatsoever. And curiously, and I have to preface this again by saying that I had enormous respect for the man once upon a time. I loved the guy way back when. But he is now embarrassed about having declared himself to be Superman back in high school. But he is now an ordained Southern Baptist minister running a fundamentalist Christian school in a megachurch in Fort Worth.
Sorry, is this an argument against mental illness?
If I can hop in here real quick, and again, I'm not a psychologist, but I actually do know a fair bit about it. And I think that something that you mentioned really, and this is something that I've actually, I was reading about narcissistic personality disorder, and the first thing that came to mind, honestly, was Nephilim Free.
Nephilim Free, yeah.
I mean, he's got all of the hallmark traits in terms of the splitting, the black and white thinking. He victimizes himself. He's got a persecution complex. He demonizes others. I mean, it's either good or bad, black or white with him. He definitely has unwarranted self-importance.
Personal relationship with God, yeah.
And he feels the need to be all powerful, to promote himself. I mean, and it's a defense mechanism in a lot of ways from, a failed person. I mean, it's a protective mechanism from shame, which Lord knows he's certainly been eating the magic sandwich equivalent of it every day that he's been on YouTube. But I mean, I actually think that you said something that really does. I think he has narcissistic personality disorder. Yeah,
well, he probably does. Sorry to interrupt. Yeah, he probably does. But my question more saying, do you think there are more people out there that are the same? The thing that strikes you with me is the incredibly skillful mental leaps they can make to prove that they really aren't wrong and that your logic is wrong, and to twist everything around.
Yeah, it's delusion. I mean, it really is. I mean, it's again that they're not the thing about people like Nephilim Free and something about creationists.
Rather than talking about Nephi, let's.
No, that's what I'm saying, and creationists in general. I'm using him as an example to illustrate my point. But all right,
what it's much closer to hope, and it's something you'd be able to talk about much better.
Okay, well, we'll talk about Hovind then, if I can finish my point real quick.
Donny, you were a believer until fairly recently, were you not? So
I guess I can't finish my point.
You're in a good position to be able to answer this question from the personal point of view, as opposed to projecting onto Nephi.
It's not just Nephilim, but to answer his question, was not necessarily believers in general, but there seems to be in what you're talking about with the mental gymnastics to overcome things. They ask questions and don't care about the answers. That seems to me to be a fundamental point. I mean, in talking to a lot of these creationists, you hear there are no transitional fossils. Oh, well, there's ABC. No rebuttal. A wonderful example was last week, that caller that we had that just swore that the fossils, that they were old people and they had, what was it, the human growth hormone,
yeah, that was Andy you just finished talking to.
Yeah, acromegaly, yeah. I mean, I think no offense, Andy, it's nice to have you back and nice to hear you come away, but I mean, absolutely, we crucified him. I mean, there's no way. I mean, it nailed every single point down, and he still said at the end of it, no, you haven't changed my opinion. I mean, there literally could not have been.
Well, it looks like we did, actually, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, but I'm talking about at the time, though. At that time, I mean, and Andy, of course, has also done some serious soul searching in the past week, and seems to have, really cared about the answer. But I do think that is a good example, at least in a short time frame. I mean, how many times has that been encountered where you explain something to them and they just ignore it? It's as if they ask the question and don't care about the answer. But I mean, kudos to Andy for coming around and thinking, and I think that it's a matter of honesty. Why I changed mine. I changed my position because I just had to be honest with myself. I realized that I wasn't applying the same standard to my religious views that I applied to every other thing in my.
When you were a believer, when you were a person faith this week, did you believe in the flood story?
No.
Right. Okay.
But you're right. No faith, no pain. You're right. There is indications about a psychological disorder, and we are talking about people who, when you're talking about young Earth creationists, you are very often talking about people who go far beyond the normal religious believer in that they are both the persecutors and the victims simultaneously, somehow in their own perspective. And they cannot or will not ever concede any critical error. They cannot examine their own views. They're very good at projection. Okay, for whatever is their fault, they will project onto their opponents. And as I commented about Sir Richard Owens once upon a time, I've met people that are like this. They are unable to concede any error except by way of an evasive maneuver. There has to be an excuse for it, right? So they can't open up and say, well, you know what, you're right, and I was wrong about that. They can only say, well, I only said that because. And they say this after they say they've never said that. You prove that they did say that, and they say, well, I only said that because. And they never concede, well, yeah, I said I never said that, and I did, and I apologize. That never happens.
Right.
So I see your point there.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to rip on, Nephilim Free exclusively. I was simply using him as a good illustration, as a canon of the psychological phenomenon that we're talking about. Yeah,
he's a classic example, isn't he?
Yeah. So it's not a beat up on, him. It's just
well thanks.
It's even broader than creationism. It stretches to everything. I mean, I see it in people that are defending their alt med beliefs. They have that selective filtering, right? Where anecdotes are given this really heavy credence because they support your position, and any scientific study is, of course, dismissed as being, biased or prejudiced. And the same thing. This is my favorite. Is they will believe some random source on the internet that's trying to sell them a water purifier instead of, the scientists who are actually doing the work on this, because the scientists have some sort of corporate interest somehow in some result, completely denying that the author of the counter study or whatever the website they're going from is also trying to make profit.
And there's also a wonderful point, and as a healthcare provider, I see this a lot. I mean, I remember last week, and I spoke with you guys briefly about this. There's a homeopathic teething tablets for babies for, the 6-month-old infants containing deadly nightshade that you're supposed to be giving them. I mean, okay, you want to spend your money on it, that's one thing, but the other thing that people don't understand about these homeopathic remedies is that they're not regulated by the FDA, and there have been incidences which means they have no quality control. So there's also an issue with, how much of the deadly nightshade is actually getting in there, and they might not be diluting it as much as they should be, and it kills them, and it's killed babies. I mean, this sort of thing is not without, without repercussion. And people in general the problem with society in general and with this whole phenomenon is people cannot think scientifically. People do not think scientifically. They think that their opinion is just as good as anybody else's, and there is no... you know what I mean? It's like you can have your opinion and I have mine.
Do you think it's because... I'm sorry, just want to clarify that. Do you think that they can't think scientifically, or they can't be bothered because they think science is boring?
I don't think they've been trained to think critically. I mean, it's critical thinking is what it comes down to. They simply haven't reached that level of intellectual development where they can, look at a situation and say, okay, what would we expect to find? What would we not expect to find? Things like that. I mean, they haven't reached the post-formal operations intellectually. And another part of it is your priorities. Would you rather be happy and be deluded, or would you rather have the truth no matter how much it hurts? Is another issue.
The trouble is that the delusion doesn't seem to bring them happiness. I've never seen such a miserable bunch of people as Christians. I don't.
No, it does give a lot of people. No, it does give a lot of people happiness. I absolutely do believe that it does. I mean, you can take them as a whole and say they're grumpy people, yada yada. But I mean, it gives them a sense of community.
And another thing,
it gives them lots of things.
It's a point that Hitchens raised in his debate with Dembski. I'm sure he's done it before as well, but I think it's an interesting one. Why is it that Christians weren't satisfied until not only that they are firmly of their beliefs, but also they've convinced everyone else as well? Why do they have this obsession with trying to...
Well, because if you think about what they believe, they would actually be terrible people if they weren't evangelizing.
That's not the reason they do it. I don't...
That might very well be so, but I mean, a lot of them genuinely do believe what they believe. I mean, and they feel that is the only path of salvation. So if they have the secret, if they have the key that can save you from, everlasting torment, I mean, to not give that to you would be...
When I hear Venom Fang X telling me he's doing it because he loves me and he cares about me, a person with absolutely no capability for empathy, I'm sorry, I'm not buying it.
And there's a psychological issue right there. When Venom Fang X says that, what he's doing is trying to get a sense of superiority, like, I have the gift, I can save you. Let me save you. I mean, he's projecting superiority onto you. I mean, but Venom Fang X is a sociopath. I mean, that's different.
I've got a number of callers waiting, so I know that you had a lot of questions. Do you mind if we end this call now, unless there's anything you want to come back on?
Not at all. You go ahead. Just to round off, obviously I wasn't really asking a question. My point here was that the debate with Noah's Ark is dead and buried on this forum. But the, Aaron Ra, he's like the Alamo at Texas, the way he believes, from what I understand. So as far as I was trying to make the point is, should we be treating the people themselves rather than arguing with the debate about whether or not something's true? Because they'll never believe it's true.
You've got 60% of America, which is about the best part of 200 million people to deal with individually, if you're going to do it in that way. So it's quite a lot to deal with.
One at a time.
Eh? Say something.
When you talk about this, dealing with people on a one-to-one basis, I mean, yeah, sure, that works. And there are people who will owe up. I've had people on my own street, however, who tell me that they believe because they have to, because they have an emotional need. But it's worse than that. Because you have to understand that what we do on this show, for example, is many of us are just activists for the community. We want to do what we're doing for free, for the benefit of society, for education, okay, for altruistic reasons, most of us. But when you're talking about these churches, and particularly when you're talking about the mega churches, you are talking about people who bring in tens of millions of dollars and who live like rock stars and who never had to have any kind of an education. All they have to do is sell nothing for a ridiculously high price, and they amass a huge fortune. That's what you're dealing with.
Yep.
And therein lies the problem.